So in this semester 2 of financial math, one of the assignments a lot of students have trouble with is this unit 2, especially when you have to use the mortgage calculator. So when you go through, there's a couple different versions. Okay, so Lulu also let me know, just joining to learn, so we'll focus on this topic for now. So in this financial math, you have to use the mortgage calculator, which they give a link to. I'm going to open that in a new tab. And when you go to use the mortgage calculator, it's a little bit confusing. There's kind of a lot going on. But what you want to focus on is this gray area, and that's where you will enter in the information. So on this particular assignment, they give you a couple of different people. So you're going to want to stay on this page before even hitting start so that you can get the information and enter it in. And you might want to like copy it down or have multiple mortgage calculators open so you can go back to each person. So like for Mike, he has a mortgage for $288,500. He took advantage of the first-time home buyer loan, which made it so he didn't have to pay a down payment. So that amount, they say mortgage, but on the mortgage calculator, it's also considered the home value since he didn't pay a down payment. And then his down payment would be 0 because he didn't pay a down payment. And so then it says the loan amount. He chose a 30-year mortgage, so 30 years with an interest rate of 3.25. You know, I just figured out this might be a little small to see, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit so hopefully you can see the wording a little bit better. So 30-year mortgage. Nope, if it'll switch over, here we go. I'm going to zoom in on this as well. So that's the loan term, 30 years. The start date, don't mess with. You're just going to leave it however it is. Property tax, PMI, home insurance, monthly HOA. I think you leave all those the same. The instructions for that were up here. Keep property tax is $2,400. PMI is 0.5, monthly HOA is 0, and home insurance is 1,000. So yeah, all of those you're just going to keep the same. But I still haven't entered in the interest rate is the last thing listed, but it's kind of higher up on the mortgage calculator. Here we're going to put our 3.25%. And then we press the word calculate. And so your information, they have some ads and stuff. Ignore those. We're looking at this section over here now on the right side. So some of the information you might need to look at is total interest paid. And notice the information is listed under the number. So this 1,538 is after 105 months, and the total interest paid is the number above it. So those two go together. You might want to look at the total amount over 30 years. Even though the home amount was only $288,000, this is what you actually pay to the bank. You actually pay $566,000 over the life of the loan because you have to pay the bank interest. They might also ask for your monthly payment. That's down here at the bottom. And what was the other one? I think sometimes you might have to answer total tax paid. So when you go through these, just look for whatever information they're asking about. Each question will be different. And most of the time it's either interest, total amount of the entire home, or your monthly payment. Even when you have a down payment, I think the wording's a little bit, Haley got a mortgage for $288,500. I think we considered this the amount of the house. So even, well, she had no down payment. Even Erica, even though it says a mortgage for $288,500, that's the amount of the house. And then the down payment, you're just going to change that from 0 to the $28,000. This loan amount, you'll never have to calculate. It just automatically does it for you once you have the home value and the down payment entered in. So that's how to use that mortgage calculator. That's usually the most confusing part of the financial math semester two, is a lot of people struggle with that mortgage calculator. Any questions on how to use it or anything you were confused on with my explanation of using the mortgage calculator? Looks like that went okay then. Sounds like you are okay with that. Most of the rest of financial math semester two is pretty straightforward. It's understanding definitions and calculating costs for like a car. All of that's a lot more straightforward than that mortgage calculator. So then, unless you have any more specific math questions, we could just go over some generic math topics. The financial math is actually a lot, just definitions, what does this particular insurance mean? Or I can go over some like algebra or geometry topics from just generic. This is something you'll see quite often in various math classes. So I'll look for chat messages still. If you have any specific topic you want to talk about, again, please let me know. And I'll just pick some general topics. One of the most common things you're going to have to do in most math classes is some sort of solving equations, where you're given a situation or given an equation where your goal is to figure out what x equals. So this is something you'll see in algebra, geometry, algebra 2. Solving equations is used in every single math class for the most part. So when we're solving equations, we always want to do opposites. Our goal is to figure out our opposite operations, and we always want to get the variable alone. So even though our variable is on the left side, yep, you already got it down. So we got an answer of x equals 8, and you are correct. You do your opposites. So opposite of addition is subtraction. And 29 minus 5 is 24. And then opposite of multiplication is division. So you're exactly correct, Kathleen. X equals 8. They can get more complicated where you might have to do some simplification before doing the solving. Yeah, so I do love math and science. The Common Core was good in theory, but they did not implement it super well. Their goal was to try and make math the standard in every state, so if you move from one state to the other, and also to try and show all the ways you could solve something. Yeah, most states are still in full swing. Almost all states had to implement it so quickly, they didn't implement it super well. So for example, like elementary especially, there's so many different ways to do things. So instead of You know, if you're doing 53 plus 28, instead of just showing you, hey, I only want to do it this one way, I'm going to do the right column, add it together, carry, get our answer. They show a lot of different ways. Like one way is to get this up to a 0 type number. So like borrow 7 from the 28 and take that 7 up here and make this a 60. But if you get rid of 7, now it's only 21, and then 60 plus 21 is still 81, but it's a way so that if you had to do it in your head instead of on paper. So yeah, the Common Core is trying to show so many different ways that it ends up being pretty confusing. But I'm glad you enjoy math. Obviously, I enjoy math because I'm a math teacher. I think it's also pretty fun and interesting to see how math can be used, and it's nice to know when you get the right answer that this is the right answer. So if you're given a more complicated equation like this, where there's a lot going on, you have to make sure and simplify each side first. This one, there's a lot more steps. You can't go straight to opposites. You can't do the operations on both sides yet. First, we just want to do things like distribute to get rid of the parentheses. Anytime you have parentheses, you would distribute that first. And when we distribute, we're multiplying it by both things inside. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and then negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. You saw me just write the answer out because most of the time you don't write out the step of, hey, I'm multiplying, you just do the multiplication in your head. And then we still have the plus 8. And now we go to the other side. 4 times 2x is 8x, and 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. So if there's the distribution step, you want to do that first. And then we want to combine any like terms. So on the left side, what like terms could we combine together? Which ones either have the same variable or no variable at all? Like terms either have the same letter, or you can have like terms where they don't have any letter. Don't see any answers in the chat yet, so I'll just keep moving forward. So like terms on the left side are the two numbers that don't have a variable. They can't combine with the x because the negative 2x, does have the letter x. So negative 8 plus 8, those can combine together, and in fact, when you combine them together, that's a 0. So if it ever comes out to 0, it actually just disappears. On the right side, when we combine like terms, now we do have two with the same variable, and we can add those together. So now we can do opposites. This one's a little bit different than the last equation, because the last equation, we didn't have an x on both sides. So this time, instead of doing opposites with our numbers that don't have a variable, we want to move this 11x over to be with the negative 2x. And since 11x is positive, we have to subtract it. Since there was no sign written in front of the 11, we assume it's positive. But then the final step is almost always the same. Usually the final step is division. And in this case, negative 20 divided by negative 13, that's not something we really want to do in our head or by hand. That's something we want to do in a calculator. if you are in any of the math classes like algebra or geometry or algebra 2, I really like this online calculator. That's www.desmos.com. It can do stuff like your normal division. Oops, I forgot to hit the divide button. Comes out as a weird decimal. It's hard to make problems that come out nicely when I'm making them up at the top of my head. And then the Desmos calculator is also great because it does your normal calculations and it does any graphing. If you have to do any sort of graphing assignment, this one is really useful to check your work instead of doing all your graphing by hand. So our answer is 1.538. We'll round it at the nearest, let's see, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Any other math questions you might have? If you don't have any specific math questions, we might end early here today. You still, for coming, will get I think there's a deal where you get some extra credit. So you've been counted for that, for being here. But if you don't have any other additional specific math questions, I think we'll end here today. Yeah, it's kind of like riding a bicycle. Once you hear it again, you're like, oh, okay, it's coming back. I do remember some of these steps. Again, if you do end up in any of the regular math courses, yeah, you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is coming back. I remember how to do this. If you end up in any of the other math courses, even if I'm not specifically your math teacher, we have 3 math teachers now. So you could have me, you might have Janae Russell, or you might have Karen Whitehead. You're still welcome to email me anytime. Even if you have more financial math course questions, you can email me and I'm happy to answer any of your questions. I also have a text message number. I forget that sometimes. And you can find those text message numbers now when you're in your course. There's that need help button on the left, and that gives you your teacher's contact information. So if you do want to contact your specific math teacher or any of your teachers, clicking that need help button will give you all of that information and you can contact them as well. Well, thanks for joining today and for participating, and I'm glad the refresher helped a little bit and brought back some of those equation skills. And please contact me anytime if you have any additional questions.